You've probably seen the acronym SNAP popping up in the news, right? But here's the thing. What it means really depends on where you're looking. Are we talking about a government food program facing massive cuts, or a big tech debate about the future of software? Well, today, we're going to untangle this whole mess and explore the two very different worlds of SNAP and SNAP.
Okay, so here's our game plan. We'll start by making sure we're all on the same page about what these two things even are. Then, we're going to dive deep into the huge changes happening with the food program. After that, we'll jump over to the totally separate but pretty heated debate in the software world. And finally, we'll bring it all together and see what surprising things they actually have in common.
All right, first things first, let's just clear the air. When you see the word SNAP, you gotta know which one you're dealing with. Because trust me, they could not be more different.
So on one side, you have the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program. This is a federal lifeline that helps millions of families put food on the table. And on the other side, we've got SNAP. That's a software system designed to make it easier to run apps on Linux computers. One is all about policy and people. The other, it's all about code.
Okay, so let's tackle that first world, the food program. Because right now, this incredibly important program is going through a massive transformation.
And to really get a sense of the scale we're talking about here, you need to understand this isn't some small niche program. Just last year, SNAP helped 42 million people. That's a huge number of Americans. So any change, big or small, is going to have a major ripple effect across the country.
And, well, a massive change has just landed. A new law signed on July 4th, 2025 is kicking off the biggest overhaul and the biggest cuts this program has ever seen.
So what does this new law actually do? Well, a few big things. We're talking stricter work requirements for more people, all the way up to age 64. States are now on the hook for a lot more of the administrative costs, 75%, up from 50%. And on top of that, they now have to chip in for the food benefits themselves. Perhaps most critically, exemptions that used to exist for groups like veterans and homeless individuals, they're gone. The bottom line here? A funding cut of $187 billion over the next 10 years.
Now, as you can imagine, this prompted a really strong reaction from state leaders. Facing these new costs, nearly 24 governors got together and sent a letter to Congress basically warning of some pretty dire consequences, things like rising hunger and serious damage to their local economies if they're forced to pull out of the program.
Okay, let's switch gears completely now. It's kind of ironic because while one SNAP is being cut up and divided, this other SNAP, the software one, is actually trying to fix a problem of division in the tech world.
See, even though it's super powerful and a favorite among developers, the Linux operating system has this tiny slice of the desktop computer market. I mean, look at that. Windows and macOS just completely dominate. So what's the deal? Why hasn't Linux really caught on with more everyday folks?
A huge part of the answer comes down to one word: fragmentation. See, unlike Windows or macOS, where there's just one version, Linux is split into hundreds of different versions called distributions. This makes it a real headache for developers who want to make one app that just works for everybody, and it can be pretty confusing for new users too.
So a company called Canonical came up with a potential solution to this exact problem: SNAP software. The idea behind it is actually pretty simple, but it's revolutionary for Linux. The goal is to create one universal application package, a SNAP, that you can install and run perfectly on any Linux system, no matter which version it is.
But this one-size-fits-all solution has kicked off a major debate. I mean, on the one hand, snaps are universal, they're secure, and they make life way easier for developers. But on the other hand, they all depend on a single, centralized Snap store that's controlled by just one company. Some users complain they can be slow to start up, and there's this big resistance from parts of the community who feel like it goes against the whole open, decentralized spirit of Linux. It's gotten so heated that some distributions, like Linux Mint, actually block you from installing snaps by default.
So here's where it gets really interesting. We've been talking about food security and software packaging, two worlds that couldn't seem farther apart. But if you look a little closer, you'll see they're both wrestling with very similar ideas: barriers, access, and who's in control.
Let's just put them side by side for a second. For people who need food assistance, the barriers are things like social stigma, tons of complicated paperwork, and just confusing rules. For developers looking at Snap software, the barriers are different, but they're still there. Resistance from the community, performance issues, a feeling of losing control over their own system. In both cases, there are these hurdles getting in the way of people using the system smoothly.
And you know, what this all boils down to is this one fundamental tension.
For the SNAP food program, it's the federal government creating stricter, centralized rules versus the ability of states and people to actually access the benefits easily. And for SNAP software, it's a single company building a controlled, unified system versus the community's desire for open standards and individual choice.
And we need to be really clear that this isn't just some abstract conversation. The stakes in both of these debates are incredibly high. For the food program, we're talking about the health, the nutrition, the financial stability of millions of families. For the software, we're talking about the very future of what it means to have user-friendly, open-source computing.
And so that kind of leaves us with this one big final question, doesn't it? Whether we're talking about technology or nutrition, how do you balance control with accessibility? What does it really take to build a system that's efficient and secure, but that still manages to serve the diverse needs of everyone it's supposed to help?